What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the VQ podcast. My name is Johnny D. Nguyen, and today my guest is Paulina Nguyen. She is an actress based in Los Angeles. Paulina, thank you for coming on and having this conversation with
Thank
me.
you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. So first and foremost, I want to ask you, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, actually.
How did your family ended up in Portland, Oregon?
It's actually kind of a very interesting story. My mom's side of the family, actually, they somehow ended up in a camp in Iowa, out of all places, and then
Hmm.
somehow migrated to Portland at some point. And then my dad's family was sponsored by actually a church. So they came over here years later after the Vietnam War. And then obviously my mom met my dad, and then here I am. But my whole family's out there. My grandpa actually is my blood grandpa actually passed away, and he was actually a war veteran. Actually, he fought against the Viet Cong, and he was a prisoner of war for 14 years, which is actually insane. And then he passed away a couple years ago. Then my grandma actually remarried to my other grandpa, who is basically my grandpa because he's been around since I was like born. But I'm sure I don't know how familiar you are with Vietnamese music, but my grandpa is Thu Kung Fung. He's the singer. I don't know if you know who
Okay.
that is, but anytime I go to the nail salon, I'm like, yeah, that's my grandpa, and everyone's like, oh my god, that's your grandpa. But they're all in Portland.
That is, well, I am on a mission to kind of learn a lot more about the songwriters from the Nhạc Vàng
Yeah,
era
yeah.
specifically, because I'm pretty sure your grandpa mentioned this, but a lot of after the fall of Saigon, all their music, their physical copies of their music was destroyed by the incoming government.
I did not know that. I mean, he's still.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know like he's done a lot of stuff. He's written a lot of songs, and he's done a lot of music. He was on Paris by Night a couple times. So yeah, they're all in Portland.
Well, Paris by Night is one of the programs that was able to really revitalize or celebrate the music that was meant to be
Mm.
destroyed. So they've that's why it got so popular by the immigrant generation, and even got so it got even more it got popular even in the country of Vietnam, even though it was banned.
Yeah, it
So
was banned.
there are a lot of documentaries that are coming out with songwriters or from that generation. One that I'm actually going to this coming Saturday. It's a documentary about a songwriter by the name of Ivan, who does a lot of has hundreds of songs that about that time.
Wow,
So
that's
uh,
amazing.
yeah, that's besides a lot of music that I promote, which are new emerging artists from the American-born Vietnamese. I do also have an interest in the historical
Mm.
side. There's a documentary about the impact of new wave music for pop for within the Vietnamese community. That's coming out also, I believe, later this year. So there's in terms of just the subject of music and history, there's a lot of cool things that are in the pipeline.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So um, then my follow-up question to that, how was it like growing up Vietnamese in Portland, Oregon? Were there other in your school, were there other Vietnamese that were uh, in and around you, or how were you able to stay connected to the your Vietnamese identity?
Surprisingly, when people think about Portland, they at the top of their head just think, oh, it's primarily all white population. But I was really blessed because I grew up in a very prominent Vietnamese area, and very much so. A lot of
What
Laotian.
city is that?
Sorry.
What city is that? Or
Portland, Oregon, in the Rose City
okay, so
district, actually. There was a whole community of Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodians, actually, very much so. And then my family I grew up Catholic. So, there's a huge Catholic Vietnamese community in Portland. I mean, there's like a huge church there. It takes up the whole entire block. So I did grow up around a lot of Vietnamese folks. I have a really big family growing up. And yeah, so like, and the school that I went to, again, predominantly very much Vietnamese, Laotian, a lot of Ming population as well, and just a very diverse community. I was very grateful to have grew up in that because I don't think my knowledge of music and pop culture would be as vibrant as it is now, you know. So very grateful to have been able to experience that for sure.
And then I gotta follow that up with how is your Vietnamese speaking? They have how would you rank that?
Back when I was younger, it was definitely a lot better than it is now, just because I had a lot more people to speak it with, because out here in Los Angeles, I don't have any family out here, so like I don't have anybody to speak my native language with. And then my both of my parents, they both speak English to me. So I would say now not so great, but I am going back to Vietnam actually next month, or no, in July. So hopefully it'll be brushed up a little bit more. But I feel like once I get thrown back in, like I'll pick it up immediately. But like for an audition, for any kind of work, I immediately call my dad and I'm like, "Hey, how do I say this?" Like, because I don't remember, you know.
Well, there definitely were some pretty big projects here in Los Angeles that were casting for native speaking Vietnamese or Vietnamese not even native, but like just being able to speak the
For sure.
language. So
For sure. It's great.
mm,
I'm so happy to see these opportunities come up, because I mean, 10 years ago when I moved to Los Angeles, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities for Vietnamese, actors.
far from
Yeah.
it. I actually that you just touched on something about 10 years ago was when I started off in Hollywood as an actor.
Really?
Before yeah, and I actually was casted in by chance I was casted in Fast and Furious Tokyo
What?
Drift.
That's
Um,
amazing.
got to be because of Asian generalizing, like all Asians are the
Right.
same. Um, my character that I got casted for because was an extreme Japanese kind of like skinhead type of
Okay.
guy, and the caster just didn't even care to ask if I was Japanese or not. He just saw an Asian guy who had a badass teenage story, like a rebellious
Mm.
story, fits the profile, looks good with blonde hair. Boom, you're it. And when we got on set, the marketing team from Japan came and were like, none of these actors are Japanese. And how are we going to market this film in Japan without Japanese actors?
Mm.
But it was a little too late. Our big action scenes were already shot, and I got to, you know, the mistake from casting.
That's
I
hilarious.
got to be a part of it. So that's my little fun story about um, my acting experience in Hollywood. But now, kind of the transition to that. So let's talk about your journey as an actress. So was that something growing up in Portland was like, how did you develop your interest into becoming an actress and then finally making the move out here to Los Angeles to pursue that?
Oh gosh, I think I always knew at a really young age. Like I was already kind of doing it and not realizing that I was doing it. Like when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I'd be playing with all of my cousins and I would make up these like scenarios that were like very specific and very dramatic. Like it'd be like, okay, we're fleeing from the village and they're after us and I'm your mom and you have to pretend like you're really sad and we have to separate and like I would make my cousins sit and like listen to me do like a pretend speech, and then my mom saw that I was like really interested in acting and she put me in like this summer theater program in Portland. And that was like the first time I ever kind of got bit by the acting bug. And then, as I got older, I got a little distracted by, boys and all those things. And it wasn't until I graduated high school, I went to college and I realized I was like, wow, like I'm really not happy. Like this is not what I want to do at all. I always knew in my heart that I always wanted to be an actor. Like I always had that, you know, vision for myself. And it wasn't until I moved out of Portland, I actually moved up to Seattle. I totally lied to my dad because you know how Asian parents are. They're very like, you need to have a plan and all these things. And I remember telling him, I'm like, all right, well, listen, I'm going to move to Seattle and I'm going to go to UW and I'm going to get a journalism degree and become a broadcast news reporter, you know, because that's kind of like the same thing. You're in front of the camera. But like deep down, I was like, I'm not doing that. Like it was a total BS lie. I ended up moving there and I got an agent out there and I did a bunch of indie films, commercials, and I think that's when it kind of started to hit me. Like I was like, wow, like I can actually do this, you know. And when you have enough people tell you, you know, that you have a talent or that you know that you're funny or that you have something, you know, you're like, oh wow, you know, I never had this validation growing up in, you know, an Asian American family. But when you have people that are finally telling you that, it kind of gives you that drive to finally go for it. So then, you
Hmm.
know, I packed up all my stuff, I put it in my car, I sold everything. I had my two dogs, I moved down to LA, and it's been a
Wow.
wild
So
journey.
your journey was exactly just like a lot of like you literally got rid of everything and just and drove all the way down
Yeah, it was
here.
just like everything I owned was in my Yaris, you know, and I had my two dogs, and I moved into a house with a bunch of jujitsu guys that I didn't even know, which,
You moved in with a bunch of guys.
yeah, like
Wow.
looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? You know, because like I think I was just in this mode of like, yes, saying yes to everything. Because I was so delusional and I believed in myself so much. And like, you kind of have to be in order to get down here and like do it, you know?
Absolutely have to
Yeah.
be. Wow. Okay. So let's I mean, I got to unpack the first year of Los Angeles because I live in Orange County and I venture to LA and I'm always mentally prepared for LA. So, but coming there, did you have any friends out here, or was it just like what
I
were your network like out
I didn't
here?
know anybody. I literally knew no one.
Wow,
Like the jujitsu guys that I lived with was a mutual friend that I had met when I was working at 24-hour fitness doing front desk. And he was like, "You're moving to California?" And I was like, "Yeah, do you know anybody that would let me crash, you know, just for like a month or two until I get settled in?" He was like, "Yeah, I know these guys. They do jujitsu. You'd be safe, and they wouldn't charge you for rent." And I'm like, "Cool," you know. So
what
yeah, and I'm
you
I
scored? No
it was
friends?
crazy though. It was crazy because I ended up moving in and I lived in the living room with a mattress on the floor with another mattress propped up and then like a screen. If you go on my Instagram, I actually have it posted on my Instagram. It's actually crazy. And lived there for about a
Humble
month.
beginning.
It was wild. It was wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, how did you? What was your journey like? Kind of going through the act, like the audition process. Did you already have like your did you have your agent already kind of booked, or like how take me through that part?
Well, you know, it's kind of crazy because when I moved to LA, I didn't have a plan. And I don't think you can have a plan. You know, I feel like anybody that moves here, it's kind of like you're figuring it out as you go. I didn't have an agent. At the time, I was, so I used to be a dancer, a B girl, break dancer. I did it for 7 years. So, like, I did have a community here, but I didn't know anybody, you know? And I think immediately when I got here, I kind of just I started looking for like side jobs, you know, like work that I could do to make extra money. I went and took headshots, and then I did end up getting a commercial agent for dancing, for break dancing actually. And then, you know, obviously, I don't think I had any like I didn't start to see any real progress of like in terms of like what I wanted to do in terms of like TV and film until maybe let me see, 4 or 5 years in, because
Yeah.
the first 4 years was figuring it out. Where do I work? How do I make a living? Who are my actual friends? Where can I park my car where I'm not going to get a parking ticket? What area is safe for a woman like me to live in, and like that was all just figuring it out. And I'm not going to lie, like the first 4 or 5 years of living in LA for me were very hard, very difficult. I went through a lot of trials and tribulations. One of my dogs got hit by a car. You know, I had a really shady manager, basically try to manipulate me and tell me like, well, if you sleep with me, I'll give you these roles, and like, anything that you would think that an actor would go through living in LA, like I feel like I went through, you know. Um but then it was like 2018, I think, I started taking classes at this place called Stan Kirsch Studios, and met Stan Kirsch, one of my favorite acting coaches I ever met. And I think once I started training with him, things just kind of changed for me, but I did a lot of training. Like, my whole goal living in LA was I wanted to be very good at my craft. And the only way to do that is to take classes and train. And I was doing comedy, you know, for 3 years. I volunteered and volunteered at a comedy theater for free for 2 years to exchange for free classes. I From there I was able to find a comedy community. I did stand up, I studied scene study, I did cold reading, I did everything I could to be so good that no one could say no to me. And I still stand by that to this day. Like, I'm still working on my craft. I always think that that's the most important thing for an actor. But once I started getting really confident in my work, that's when I started kind of booking more roles, and then started meeting more people. And then obviously 2 years ago, I booked my first reoccurring guest star. And that was probably the last big thing I've ever booked network wise.
So we're gonna dive into that particular series. But were there any other notable projects that you say kind of you learned a lot from, or like you would like to share?
Yeah, I let me think. In terms of like experience and going through the auditioning process, 2018 was probably one of the best years I had, like, as an actor. Had booked like 3 feature films that year. I booked a web series. I booked, several shorts. And I think uh, the first film I booked as a lead, you know, because I had never booked a lead role before in terms of like a feature. It was always like the supporting role, because being Asian American, you think like, I'm never going to be the lead. I'm not going to book a lead role. And it wasn't until 2019 I booked actually an action film with DMX. And the movie itself, obviously wasn't the best project in the world. But in terms of experience and what I got out of it, it was incredible. You know, um,
I mean, it was your first lead role,
it was my
right?
first lead as like the female, antagonist.
Antagonist.
So
Okay.
like that was amazing. And not only that, like I had gotten the script literally 2 days before we started shooting. And that I mean, that's
Oh,
unheard of.
that
Yeah,
sucks.
it was terrible. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this as like a really extreme actor boot camp. And we shot that film in 6 days.
Full feature
Yeah,
film.
yeah,
Wow.
because that production company, they do that. But I learned so much just from doing that.
I think boot camp was probably the best way to
Yeah,
describe what you went through.
for sure,
So cool.
for
Well,
sure.
thanks for bringing that up because that ultimately prepared you for your biggest project, which was the reoccurring. So Power Book 4 Force, so is the, I believe, third spin-off from the original series Power, which
Fourth
is the
actually,
executive,
fourth spinoff.
or fourth spin-off,
No,
sorry.
no worries.
And I followed along actually the original Power series because I'm a huge 50 Cent fan. And it was during the season one when Empire was doing well on network television, but 50 Cent had to share his opinion that the real street hustle is Power, and I bought into that from a marketing standpoint. And I like both shows for different reasons. I came, I come from a musical background, so Empire really spoke to me in that respect, but the the way Power was presented with the dynamic actors and the characters, uh, it really drew me in. So I it is intense though for those who are not who are is not familiar or not familiar with Power. It is an intense series. It's a drama, right? But let's talk about your character Mai, and maybe you can give the audience a little bit about what Power Book 4 is, and what the premise of the world that it takes place in.
Sure. So if you are familiar with the original Power series, it went on for many seasons. It was very popular. People loved it. And so 50 was like, "Hey, let me make some spin-offs off of the original Power." So the fourth spin-off is actually based on Tommy's character. And Tommy plays the best friend in the original Power, as you guys know. And he's a fan favorite. People loved his character. And so they did
He has a lot of different beats for sure.
yeah. And
that
so they
he,
did a whole spin-off on his character, and it takes place in Chicago instead of New York. So and I think they're already on they wrapped their second season. Yeah, their
wow.
second season's about to premiere, I think, in the fall. And if all goes well, they'll, start filming the third season. I mean, if we get over this writer's strike. But yeah, it's a very popular show. I was really blessed and very grateful to have been on it, because like I had heard about Power, obviously. I never watched it. And when I got the audition, I remember binge watching the whole entire first season and being like, "Oh my god, this is freaking amazing."
You had to. If I was auditioning for Power, I was already a fan. I would have binged every episode just to
Yeah.
prepare, because and also knowing that they incorporated a Vietnamese character, a Vietnamese American character, right, into this universe.
Yeah, which was like totally not even in their plans, by the way. Uh
Okay, so
yeah.
let's talk about the character Mai, and give us a little background on her, and how did the Vietnamese part come about
Sure.
then?
So, originally when the audition came through, her name was not Mai. Um and they originally actually was looking for Southeast Indian. They wanted Southeast Indian. But they saw everybody, they saw Black, they saw Asian, they saw Latina, they even saw anybody who identified as LGBTQ, which I thought was really cool that they did that. And then obviously I got the audition and I impressed them, and got the call back. And then the showrunner, Munich,
Obviously, you impressed them.
yeah, and
Yeah,
the
yes.
showrunner was
Like,
like, you know what? Let's make this character Vietnamese because you're Vietnamese. And then they changed her whole name. They gave her a Vietnamese name, which I thought was really, really respectful in terms of like, you know, my cultural background and representation because there are no Vietnamese characters in the Power universe at all.
I want to make a comment there. If the film that I was on, if 10 years ago, if they didn't make that, it's quite developed. It's evolved since in terms of making sure the cultural sensitivity and accuracy is there.
which I
So,
think is great.
but
I think it's great.
it's great. Shout out to that casting director because I ended up getting the job anyway.
Right. But I also, have some thoughts about that as well. Because I feel like as an Asian American actress, living here in LA and pursuing a career in Hollywood, there are so many barriers already set up, for Black, Indigenous, people of color. And when casting is too specific, I feel like it kind of hinders us a little bit because we've already have so many boundaries set up for us, right? And you see other ethnicities and cultures being open and being able to play other ethnicities. So why can't we do that as well? You know,
Hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, like for me instance, I've played Filipino before. Um, because I have been told that I can pass as Filipino. I've also seen, I mean, I know this was like a long time ago, but like you see, white passing actors do it all the time. You see Irish actors play, Italian or, whatever. And it's like, well, why can't we do that as well? So I feel like it's good and it's bad. Um, but I do feel like sometimes it does create walls for us still, even though we already have so many against us already, if that makes
I No, it does, and I respect that opinion. It's I think from the perspective of marketing, I think the lens that I was seeing it on the Tokyo Drift
sense.
side, it was the Japanese marketing department that came and was like, we none of these bankable names. We don't have anything to kind of to and the film is it takes place in
Right.
Tokyo, but yet we can't. So there are some elements that besides just who can do the job and who can do it well to how the community is going to receive it. You
Totally.
know, like the HBO Sympathizer, the show that's going to be coming out in 2024. There's a lot of talks about that, like because there at the time there were challenges in finding a Vietnamese French actor, right, who was going to play the lead role, and and it had to be of a certain look and feel and all this stuff. So it was if they cast it outside of Vietnamese, how would the Vietnamese community have responded to that? So there's a lot of there's a lot of those elements that come into play when it's packaging and presenting it to the prospective
Totally.
audience.
And I think it also depends on, the project as well. I think the sympathizer is very much like historical, right? So we do have to be very specific. But I know Sandra Oh is in that. I don't know if she
Yeah,
plays
she
Vietnamese,
plays a Korean,
but um,
she plays a
oh,
Korean
she
character.
does. Oh, thank
Mhm.
goodness. Okay, that's great.
They shift stuff around, so I know a lot of I think cultural like consultants and the different production
It's
folks
funny
that are
because
on
I
there. I also
actually
know
auditioned for that project twice.
there was there was a lot. I was given a part even though I don't act anymore.
That's
And
great.
it,
Wow, you got an offer.
I
Wow, look at that.
but I turned it down because they wanted me to gain 90
Oh,
pounds and then keep it on for a full year. And I talked it over with my wife and was just I can't do
90
this.
pounds is a lot.
It's a lot. Just the challenge of getting to that point and then maintaining it and then looking myself in the mirror and go, and feeling good about myself
Yeah.
for it was a challenge. So they did find somebody closer to that weight, which I thought was a better
Okay,
choice.
good. Good.
And I prefer to be on this side of the lens and just interviewing him and the rest of the cast. But I from the trailer, it looks absolutely
I
amazing, and I think
honestly
it's
can't
gonna be
wait to see it. And I'm like so excited for us, you know? Great.
absolutely. So let's dive into this badass character Mai, right? Like I she every time I read up about the character, it's the only way to describe it is badass. So how would you describe Mai and how does she how is she integrated in this world and her relationship to Tommy in this series?
Well, I think Mai is, eh, when you're, how do I say it without, I think she was in a little over her head, because the drug game is no joke.
The drug game is
The
no
drug game is no joke, especially.
and Chicago, like, which is a character in itself,
Yeah.
right?
And like the thing is, she came from a background where her family didn't have a lot of money, and then now she's in this very powerful position. And I think when you have worked so hard to get to a place where you didn't wasn't given to you, I feel like you can walk around with this like I can do anything kind of energy, and I think my had that, that's why she was such a badass. That's why she was like, you know what, I have a vision, I see it, I'm gonna go and get it. And I think when she did try to get it, things got in a little over her head. She got her ego got a little big. And
Was she on the same side with Tommy, or she was competing against Tommy?
there's another regular on the show. Her name is Lily. She plays Claudia, and
Claudia. Okay, that's the other
yeah,
character. Yeah.
and Claudia comes from a very rich, wealthy Irish like mob family, um, who basically owns the drug game in Chicago, right? And Mai knew that. So Mai was like, you know what? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna meet this girl and I'm gonna get her to distribute my drugs. So that's basically Mai's character. She's like head of a big pharmaceutical company, and she had like this very new crazy drug that basically she introduces into the power universe in Chicago. And Tommy gets information on this from Claudia. And basically, what's happening behind the scenes is that I get a sense that Claudia's trying to play a game, trying to pull something against me. And her and Tommy basically link up and they work together. And I call her out and I get really mad. And obviously, emotions run high and things happen.
Was there um any kind of chemistry between you and Claudia, the character mine Claudia, or no?
Well, you haven't seen it, right? You
Yes.
haven't seen it?
No.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it for you, but basically Claudia plays my lover on the show. And
Wow, so really interesting dynamic
yeah,
with
so
that character.
basically I come into it knowing who she is, and I basically seduce her with this crazy drug and my looks, and I'm like, "Hey, let's be partners. Let's work together."
I think I saw the trailer in that part.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm like, "Hey, let's work together." And then with the drug game, people get a little power hungry, they get a little greedy, they get a little impatient. And I feel for Mai. She really wanted it to work out, and it just didn't work out in her favor. Let's just say that.
Well, we prior to this particular show, have you ever made a trip to Chicago?
No, it was my first time.
First time, and how long did you end up staying out
Uh,
there?
I was out there for almost 4 months. Yeah.
4 months. Okay, so because with the original Power series, they did such a good job of showing kind of the drug game in New York. Um, did you do any kind of deeper research in Chicago as a whole, so to kind of understand how tough like Chicago is?
Yeah, I'm very much a researching actor, which is so funny that you asked me that because I feel like that's really important to the work. And I obviously have watched a lot of shows that took place in Chicago. Like I used to watch Shameless, freaking loved Shameless. But yeah, I read up a lot about Chicago crime and like, because it talks about how Mai comes from that background. you know.
Right. So you kind of have some of the kind of like the Chicago vibe or the some of the slangs and the speaking styles, right?
Oh, I didn't really look into that actually. I just kind of looked up like the neighborhoods
Like,
and,
mhm.
but that one, maybe I should have. Maybe they wouldn't have killed me off. I'm joking. I'm totally joking. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, I always like, I know that a lot of Asian Americans like who are like from the South or from Texas or from like New York, you don't really hear a lot of us having a lot of that accent. So I just was like, you know what? Mai doesn't have it. She doesn't have it. She grew up Vietnamese. Like she probably doesn't talk in a Chicago accent. So I don't think I wanted that dynamic with her, But really good question to ask. Maybe I should have.
That is also Pride Month right now, and Mai's character being LGBTQ. Like, um, what was the, I guess, general reception of her character from that particular community, and was it easy for you to play a LGBTQ character?
Yeah, I consider myself as somebody who is a part of the LGBTQ community, and honestly, it was a blessing for me to be able to represent that. I
Awesome.
don't know if a lot of people in the LGBTQ community watch Power, because I didn't really get a lot of like fans from that community as much as I thought I was going to. Um, but it wasn't hard for me at all. I'm happy to do it. I want to represent for the LGBTQ community, especially being someone who is Vietnamese and first generation. I know that for a lot of people that probably wasn't easy growing up and coming out to your Vietnamese parents. It wasn't easy for me even, telling my mom when I was 16, like, hey mom, I think I might be bisexual, and like hearing her reaction like was also very traumatizing, but like now I'm not ashamed. I'm very happy to like speak that truth, and like everyone in my family knows, and they don't judge me. And if they do, I don't care. I'm very much like I'm living in my truth. I'm happy to do it, and I don't have a problem with it at all. And I have a lot of friends who are in the LGBTQ community, and like I'm happy to represent.
So, kind of jumping to that, and we talk about family. Like, okay, so Mai's character is a badass. Power is an intense series, like I said. We as Vietnamese like to brag to our parents about our work. Um, have your family watch the series, and what was their reaction to seeing you as Mai?
You know, it's really funny that you asked me that because people would be like, "Oh yeah, no, Vietnamese people don't watch Power," but my whole entire dad's side of the family, they all watch Power. Yeah, they all
Wow.
watch it. And that's because it's really funny because like when I tell people I grew up in Portland, they just again going back to like envisioning, oh, like you probably grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood, but like for me that wasn't true. Um, my family on my dad's side, I don't know if you remember this like era. It was like maybe like late 90s, like early 2000, mid 2000s. There was a very big like Asian gang population in Portland. There still is. Um,
In Portland, yes,
there still is.
absolutely.
And a lot of my aunts dated those Asian gangsters. So I grew up with a
Rap, the original, there was a the OG of Vietnamese rap, Vietnamese American rap, is a guy named Ty G.
exactly, and I know
Um,
exactly who you're talking
and,
about
and
because
and the track that he made popular
Vietnamese
was
gang.
Vietnamese Gang.
It's a Vietnamese gang that I bang with. And like my uncle, my aunts, like they all hung out with him. They all knew him. Like it was a very small community. So like I'm very versed. You know, I grew up listening to 50 Cent, like, because my aunts and uncles were very big on listening to hip hop music and all that stuff. So, like, they all watch Power. They're very familiar with the show. My mom's side of the family, not so much. But yeah, they all watched it. When I booked the role, they were all very excited for me. You know, my dad obviously hasn't seen it, and I don't want him to see it because it's a lot. It's intense. It's a lot.
It's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a lot.
So were they able to separate Paulina from Mai?
You know, my sisters watched it, and it was hard for them because I do have like an intimate scene there with Claudia, and they were kind of like, it was really hard for me to watch it. But like, you did good though. You did your thing, and I'm like, thank you. So I don't know if they were able to separate. I feel like it's hard for any like family member or friend to like see your friend who like you know is your homie like naked. You're like, whoa, like I don't know if I can see that. But other than like the intimacy scenes, like they were all very impressed with my work and very happy for me. So I mean, Power is a big show, and I'm again very grateful to have been on it.
Talking about jumping into the deep end, we talked about boot camp earlier, and then jumping on to Power and to do, for most actors, I feel is very vulnerable doing an intimate scene, right? And your first big reoccurring, you're like, gotta do it, gotta make it happen. So was it, what was your, what was your thought process going into that particular scene and preparing for it?
You know, when I came to Hollywood, I remember always telling myself that I wasn't comfortable being naked, right? And and I think as I've matured as an actor and as an artist and like have gone through a lot of my own healing in terms of like, you know, who I am as a person and finding my own individuality, I realize like being naked is, you know, just such a taboo that was created in my family just because like I was raised Catholic. It's very conservative. And you know, I don't consider myself somebody who practiced Catholicism anymore. And I now practice my own spiritual beliefs. And for
Mhm.
me, being naked it wasn't a big deal for me at all. You know, like for me, I was like, you know, like there's nothing wrong with being a beautiful woman and like we're all human. We're all, you know, we're all being sexually active. We're all intimate. We all love each other in different ways. Like, and I think once I got past that, being naked on set was actually like very liberating for me, to be honest.
Wow.
I was obviously very, very nervous. But like they were very respectful. It was a closed set. They had an intimacy coordinator. Lily, who played, you know, Claudia, was very sweet about the whole thing. It wasn't her first time being naked,
I was just gonna ask, was that her first
not
time?
at
Okay.
all. So like she was, you know, very very sweet in introducing me and helping me feel comfortable. She even showed me like this really funny video. I don't remember what year it was, but it was like a pre-Oscar, like an Oscars like opening musical that they did a couple years ago, and it was like I saw you naked, and it was like a bunch of gay boys singing about how they had seen all these famous actresses naked. And it was like Kate Winslet, I saw you naked. It would point the camera at Kate Winslet, point the camera at Charlize Theron, and I remember her showing me that, and afterwards she was like, "Do you feel better?" And I was like, "Wow, I didn't realize how many very talented, very Oscar nominated winning actresses have been naked on screen. Even Lucy Liu has been naked." And I was
Mhm.
like, you know what? Yeah, I actually feel fine. I don't feel nervous about this at all. So it was actually a very liberating experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, um, I want to go back to uh, because we mentioned him earlier, and he's such a this is his show. What was it like working with hip hop legend 50 Cent?
Ooh, right when you said that, I just got goosebumps. I grew up listening to 50 Cent. I mean, when Get Rich Die Trying came out, I remember listening to that on my Walkman, walking home from school. I think I was like 10, which is like, I know it's a little young to be listening to it, but like, I loved it. It was, I mean, everybody knew the words, you know? So being able to work on a project, you know, produced by him was, I mean, I mean, till this day, I sometimes will like, it'll pop up in my head. I'm like, what did I actually do that? You know, like, cause like, again, I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop music. I breakdanced for like 7 years. Like, I'm very, you know, very much versed in hip hop culture. So meeting him was like insane in itself. I remember meeting him for the first time and I couldn't even, words weren't even coming out of my mouth. But like honestly, a dream. It was a dream.
The closest I got to 50 Cent was actually to his artist at the time, Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo.
Okay.
Uh, and it was an interesting meet because his company were looking for. I was involved in a modeling agency at the time where I was one of the coordinators, and so they invited us out to 50s and Eminem's
Oh my god.
tour at the time. But I was hoping to meet 50, but I ended up meeting his boys
Uh-huh.
instead. But either way, it was still a really cool experience because we were invited to their big concert and got to see him, but didn't really get a chance to meet the legend himself. So that was for so when how involved is he on set?
You know, I didn't see him much on set, but like he had came to Chicago and he actually took out the whole cast to the sugar factory. So 50
Okay.
Cent took us to the candy shop. And it was amazing. But like I don't think he wasn't so much on set when I was there, but I feel like he's pretty involved in terms of like picking who he wants to be on his show because we had talked about it at dinner. Like I think it was Gabrielle. She had asked him like, "Oh, like did you watch our tapes?" And I remember him saying like, "Why do you think you're here?" So I do feel like he's pretty involved in terms of like picking who he wants to be on his show. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's the executive producer.
Hmm. Well, I mean, to have it, he beefed with Empire and said that he was going to outlast them, and we see who ended up ruling that
He wasn't
genre.
wrong, I guess. He wasn't wrong.
He definitely was not. So I want to talk about your. I want to talk about AAPI month because I want to get to know your relationship to the identity, right? So like you lived out here in Los Angeles for 10 years now, and progressively, um, when it came time to when it came to May, which was AAPI month, do you feel it is progressively like there's a lot more activity or more awareness of AAPI month?
Yeah, totally. I always felt like it's so crazy because like, throughout my years of living here, I never really felt like I was, I guess, Vietnamese. Like I know I'm Vietnamese. That's my culture. I come from that. But like I never felt like I had a place. And I feel like as the years have progressed, more opportunities have come out for us. There's more communities that are throwing events. There's just and there's a lot of like, and then also with the whole Asian hate thing, I think that really, added more to us, uniting together. Uh, and like honestly, what I really want to see more too is I want to see not only just the Asian American community unite, but I think it would be really fucking, excuse my French, really fucking beautiful if, you know, not only just the Asian communities, but like the Black community, the Latino community, like if we all just came together, like imagine how powerful we would be together. I feel like there's sometimes still somewhat of a divide. But I do feel like, yeah, I feel like living here, I've seen a lot more than I ever have, which is gives me a lot of hope. Gives me a lot of hope.
There's definitely a lot of divide, and there's a lot of I've been doing my work here at VQ Media. as I'm trying to understand a lot more. My first journey was to get to connect all the different diaspora communities. So outside of just California, I also connect with the Vietnamese Canadians. And then the most fun I have was connecting with all the Vietnamese Europeans, which
Mm.
have every one of those countries have a very different story, and getting to know them. So that's my main mission, is to first connect with all of them and then find some common themes that we can come together on how to build a more global community. And then the bigger mission is to connect the Vietnamese diaspora community with the Vietnamese from the motherland themselves,
Mm.
because there is huge cultural differences, and also a lot of friction at times in certain topics, um, that that although we all are Vietnamese and we share that blood, but there are some very hot button topics that will still keep us segregated in our own perspective communities.
Yeah, and it's I don't I yeah, totally. I see that.
And it's I would say I've gotten beaten up a couple times, like through older generations not understanding my mission. I've been misunderstood by younger Vietnamese by saying that I empathize, or let me rephrase that, sympathize a little bit more with the Vietnamese from Vietnam,
Hmm.
and then other ways around. Like so there's a lot of things in my position are where I get criticized for not being too much on one particular side. So it's been quite a journey, but I welcome it and I enjoy it. And we in the next 3 to 5 years, I feel there will be progress and change. But I just got to keep at it, you know. So with that being said, I do want to uh, uh, ask if you've ever come and visited down here to Little Saigon in Orange County, where there is that large like pocket of Vietnamese. You know, in one concentrated area.
I have actually a couple times, and I llove it. The food is so good.
Well, the food tourism is definitely where you got to come. I mean,
Ah,
the food in Angeles to the food in Orange County, when it comes to Vietnamese, it's it's
it's
drastic, right?
amazing. It's amazing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really like going down there. I actually have a cousin that lives down there. And then I actually have a few friends that live over there. So any opportunity I can get to go down there, I do. It's just a little far from me because I'm all the way, I'm in Hollywood. So
Yeah, yeah. I know. I usually have to come up to you guys
yeah.
to plan things, but so this next question I have for you is, what does being Vietnamese mean to you?
Whew. What does being Vietnamese mean to me? That's such a deep question.
I was asked for the first time, and I was like, no one's asked me
No
that
one's asked
before.
me that before.
So and that kind of began my work, my personal identity work.
I know that I still have a lot that I want to learn, and I'm really excited to go back to my home country, you know, next month. Only because I haven't been back in so long, and I feel like I'm very disconnected, because I live in Hollywood. I don't have any family out here. My family's all in Portland. I don't even speak my native language really. But, you know, to me, I'm very, very grateful and and I feel very fortunate to be a part of the Vietnamese community, only because we do have so much culture, and like we've been through so much, you know,
Yes.
to come here, and be here and make a life, like I wouldn't be here if my mom and my grandma, my grandpa didn't flee the country and they end up on a rowing boat and then end up in Iowa, out of all places. And I know that wasn't easy, and it still isn't easy for a lot of people who live in America who are struggling to make ends meet, but like I'm happy to represent for my community because I feel like, I mean, I'm not obviously where I want to be, in terms of my career, but I know that I'm going to get there. You know, I know that I've
And just
made a lot of progress from not even being a Nepo baby. Like, I don't know anybody here. When I moved, I didn't come from Hollywood royalty. I literally came, to Hollywood and was like, I'm going to be an actor. And like, and I'm doing it. And I'm really grateful and happy to be the first one in my family to take that risk and represent for my culture and my community. And I hope that, more opportunities come where we can show people that we're not just one side of who we are. Because I feel like, the media does that a lot, where it's like, this is what a Vietnamese person is, and this is how they are, this is what they look like. But it's like, no, that's only one dimension of us. There's so much more to us, and I'm really excited to share that with people.
awesome. So let just so I can get a baseline, since it's been a long, long time been back to Vietnam. Do you consume any content, entertainment, any like what is your current like idea of what Vietnam is?
I actually watch a lot of YouTube videos, like YouTube, like travel.
Like travel?
Yeah, like travel videos. And
Great, right?
they're amazing. I'm so excited to go back, honestly. Um, I mean, the last time I was back, I was like 5, so I don't remember much.
Oh my God.
And like now I'm going back as like a fully grown adult, but I just envision Vietnam being very beautiful and like peaceful and just I don't know. I have no words. I have no words, honestly.
It's gonna this next chapter for you is gonna be a very it's gonna be very impactful on how you um, where you go and how you take it all in. Beautiful is one area in terms of if you are vacationing and going to seeing some of the landscapes. And I think for our identity, I think it is very important for American-born Vietnamese to visit Vietnam and take it all in because here in America we find ways to represent and stand out, but when you go to a country where everyone around you is of the same identity, it's quite surreal, to be quite honest. And it made me, again, like I said, this past 3 years, this has been my I'm obsessed with this journey. It made me kind of really do a deep dive in understanding the other side, because growing up I only know from the immigrant stories, because out of respect for the family. But like when I go out there, these young 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds that are in business, like they're business professionals or they're actors or they're musicians, which is what I focus on. They have a different outlook in life and how they consume outside cultures and influence it into their art. So it's increase is a very inspirational space because it's growing, and it's a space where there's an audience that if you do happen to be in any perspective industries, whether it's film, whether it's sports, whether it's business, you're going to be you're going to be um, performing for millions of people. So I wanted to bring something to your attention. The very famous Thai Viet G from Portland, Oregon, with Vietnamese gang. So he's on one of the hottest television show in Vietnam
What?
called Rap. So let me kind of give you a little bit of context. So Rap Viet debuted 3 seasons ago, where it was from a TV competition show in Thailand called The
Uh-huh.
Rapper. Hugely successful. They brought it to Vietnam. Season one was a huge smash, like similar to
That's
American
amazing.
Idol was. And but where they lost steam in season two was that they didn't they in season two of Rap Viet, they brought a bunch of established rappers to the competition, and the audience saw that. They were like, this isn't the season one was charming because you're finding these gems, these undiscovered artists, and to an American Vietnamese watching it, you're like, what the hell, rap is like this now, it's super cool.
I didn't know
So they
that.
took a year. they took a year break, and they brought in to be one of the mentors, coach, similar to what you see here in America. Um, and they brought Thai Viet
What?
G. And
Good
the
for him.
reference they made to him, and this was really dope, was all the judges said, because they're all in their 20s and 30s over there, and Ty is 40. They're like, we grew up, our first artist that we heard that is Vietnamese in the rap genre was you. So they had this huge, like, everyone threw up the Vietnamese gang, and it was like all these little 19, 20-year olds doing that. It was really a cool moment, because he to me represents my identity, because I'm, an American Vietnamese, and to see him being on a TV program where he's struggling to also speak fluent Vietnamese, but he says, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to do Vietlish to the fullest. They've He's become quite popular. So they're on episode 3 as of right now. I will send you the link so you
Oh
can
my
watch
God,
it,
yeah, I
because you're
would
going
love
back to
to.
it. There's season premiere did 4.5 million views in 24
What?
hours on YouTube, and in the nation it did probably 20 to 30 million views. So it's an extremely popular TV
Hmm.
program. Uh, I also happen to be blessed with signing on to become a segment producer for Vietnam Idol. So that just happened
Wow.
literally. So Vietnam Idol, why I'm bringing that up is there's this season of Vietnam Idol, which was on a 7-year hiatus. They wanted to incorporate the Vietnamese Americans into their
Hmm.
program. So one of the audition cities is going to be here in Orange County. So I get the opportunity to direct the audition episode here in the States, and three contestants will be able to be competing in the national competition in Vietnam Idol. So this is also one of those bridging the gap between the Vietnamese from the motherland and the Vietnamese from the overseas community. So I'm blessed because of my platform, VQ Media. They approached me and said, "You are the perfect bridge for this
That
project."
is
So it's
amazing, Johnny. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's very important for me through my podcast program to continue to interview and share these different stories, and to interview talent and artists like yourself, because I I I I love telling stories, but I also want to. I feel like I can share with you so much of what, since you're going back to Vietnam, so much of what to expect and what you would have never known to expect going into Saigon, and all this other surrounding cities out there.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to, go back to my roots. I really am. It's been a really long time, and I have felt very disconnected. So,
How long are you gonna be out there?
3 weeks, but I think we're also going to Korea and we're also going to Tokyo. So,
Okay. Have a great time for
thank
sure.
you.
Kind of to wrap things up, is there what's in store for you next besides the trip to Vietnam? Do you have any notable projects or anything in the works that you would like to share?
Um, Not that I can say, but right now I've just been writing. I've been doing a lot of writing. Trying to work on my own stuff again because we're not all just one dimensional, you know. But yeah, just writing a lot. We are on strike right now, so there's not really much going on.
Yep. I interviewed a writer a couple of episodes back, and yeah, she shed a lot of light into the strike itself, and also um, just a lot of the misconceptions that screenwriters make a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with actors too, just because of this whole streaming thing that has happened in the last 10 years. The actors we might be going on strike as well. We just got authorized to go on strike if we don't meet a new deal by the end of the month. So, perfect time to go to Asia.
At the time. Absolutely. And there's a lot of cool things to do. It will be rainy, so I will let you know that.
Okay.
Be prepared. And when it rains in Asia, it rains.
Great.
But the food is going to be amazing. It's easy for us Americans to kind of go back there and navigate through uh, through the country now than it used to be. So for sure, after the podcast, I'll give you some
Oh my
tips.
God, thank you so much.